This is the 73rd episode of the Mind Your Noodles podcast, and this week I thought I'd cover off what I call brain needs or brain requirements for both customers and employees. And a lot of this comes from neuroscience research. As a matter of fact, all of it comes from neuroscience research. But what neuroscience is telling us is that when we don't meet certain requirements, that we create a fight or flight response in both employees and customers. And there's five things. The first is social importance. The second is clear future, or the ability to anticipate the future. The third is personal control or freedom. The fourth is being equitable or fair. And then the fifth is a greater good. And so these five things are things that when you're looking through a thinking lens at your organization, how are they playing in your organization? So let's start by going through each of these. Let's start with the social importance. There's really no order here as far as priority. They are just things that for you to look at in your organization. So here, social importance or standing within the organization. First, looking at the customer, or excuse me, the employee, we'll see people losing standing in the in your organization, and this creates stress, but also it can be very individual. In other words, there may be some things that all people are affected by. For instance, if the environment that we're in now, you're working from home as opposed to being in an office with people. It's been forced upon people. That in alone can cause stress in an organization. But anytime you lose influence or position or anything amongst your peers and management in your organization, you're going to be losing standing, and that's going to create stress with you. And again, varying levels depending on the individual, but across the board, anytime you're losing standing, perceive, and I want to emphasize that perception is reality in all five of these things. You may sit there and say, well, that isn't what we meant to do. It doesn't matter. It's what the person or the group of people within your organization perceive things as. When we get to the customer, the same thing can happen. You may not feel like you're being treated as a customer, and because you're not feel that you're being treated as a customer, that obviously creates stress. You've lost your standing as a customer, and I found this to be very crucial in this kind of customer organization dance that goes on, especially in sales and things of that sort. Ultimately, you can manipulate somebody maybe to buy your product, but if you feel like you've been duped, then you're going to be pretty upset. And as we know, people tell other people, and this is kind of the heart of what's happening in organizations when they're interacting with customers. Is they're having this environment where they're creating stress because they're not treating them like customers. They look at them customers as people to be manipulated in a sales scenario in order to achieve a goal, typically a reward of some sort. But the reverse can happen, and it can be very good too. And that's maybe getting an unexpected positive, something that you didn't anticipate. But this doesn't happen very often. You think about a lot of the interactions that you have with organizations. Very rarely do they surprise you. Usually it's they underwhelm you with the type of service that you're getting. And this is one of the surveys have shown over and over again. If people will pay more for good service and achieving that. So, excuse me. The second thing is a clear future. And here we're talking about people like to know or be able to anticipate the future. They don't like surprises. And that creates this fight or flight response or fear within the organization. And a lot of this happens, and you hear this over and over again, in every organization I've ever worked with is, there's no communication, going on within the organization. We were going right, and management went left, and they never told us, that was the new direction. And oh well, somebody should have told you, or yeah, we missed that, or whatever. And so, especially in larger organization, communication becomes very difficult. And this is one of the things that needs to be mitigated in organizations, is constantly trying. It's never going to be perfect, but constantly trying to find new ways to get communication. Uh, Also, if you're making changes within the organization and there's no clear future about what's going on, people will fill in the blanks. I mean, employees will make assumptions about what's going on, and sometimes the narrative gets way off track of what maybe an organization is trying to achieve, but it doesn't matter. Again, perception is reality here. When we're looking at customers, a lot of times what I find organizations are dealing with are previous expectations that have been built, either from a competitor and the service that they got, or the product that they got from a competitor, or even expectations of what you would get dealing with any service or organization that's selling you a product. So those start to build your expectations. Now, most customers have pretty low expectations nowadays, and that's why there's such great opportunity in using some of the information from the 95 method to improve your organization. But as a customer deals with your organization, if most of their experiences are negative, as they are with cable companies, they switch all the time. And same thing seems to happen with mobile phones. People switch all the time because of a bad experience or series of experiences that play out, and they're these expectations about what they expected or they anticipated what the future would look like fall far short. And that's one of the reasons why Surface has such a great opportunity to make really maybe even small improvements that lead to big change. But you've got to understand what's important to the customer. And most organizations don't even look at what customers' expectations actually are. They're so busy trying to hit their internal metrics to maybe for a reward or to survive their organization that they don't seek out what's important to a customer. The third thing is personal control and freedom. And one of the statistics that you'll see, and you can look at it online, is like 70% of all projects fail in organizations because they fail to engage employees in the change that's happening within their organization. Because I've worked on so many information technology projects, this happens over and over again. An employee not participating in changes to their own work is a recipe for failure. You can't just and information technology people, whether it's outsourced to a different company or whatever, they don't engage the people that do the work, and by virtue of not engaging those people, guess what happens when they go to implement it? Well, first of all, they're probably going to find about 50 things that you didn't consider, but also there's a pushback associated with that. You're making me do my work differently, but what I'm discovering as I use this new technology that you've given me is that it doesn't work better than it did before. Even if it did, doesn't matter. Again, perception is reality on each one of these 5 things. Customers are the same way. I mean, they want to participate in what's happening, and you move that along with having a clear future. You want them to be able to not only understand what's happening, but also participate in that understanding. They do that a lot of times through questions. But if you've done your work and you understand what their expectations are, then you're going to be able to kind of lead them along, and they're going to be asking new questions that are going to give you new insights to what's important from a customer perspective. The fourth thing is being equitable and fair. Now, with employees, this typically has to do, in almost every organization, is pay. Is it fair? Are you, or is it perceived to be unfair? And nowadays, you see such a disparity between executives and frontline people. You know, I'm the one kind of doing the work with the customers. And if you ask a customer, by the way, who does the important work, it's not going to be the CEO of the company. It's going to be the people that they have to interact with on a daily basis. So it's important that employees feel that things are equitable and fair within the organization. And a lot of that comes from the freedom to be able to do some things. Now, with customers, it's very misleading. Information, for instance, if you overcharge them, they feel like they're being scammed or there's perceived fraud there. Now, there may not be, or there may be, depending on your organization. But um, the if they feel like they're getting bad information, this builds from, if you can think of calling into a contact center. One person gives you one piece of information, somebody else gives you another piece of information. Talk to a third person, they give you a different answer. You're going, what the heck's going on here? I trying to get this problem solved that I have, or order a new service, and you're telling me different things about what's going on from three people from your organization. Three different people in your organization give me three different answers. So again, equitable, whether things are equitable or fair, and employees and customers, these are things that you need to find out what's important actually to both groups. The customer certainly first, because that kind of sets the standard for frontline people or employees within the organization. The fifth thing is greater good. And, I talk about this in terms of a mission or aim in an organization, that it's important for you to, and it's something I built in the last, I'm going to say, decade, is making sure that your mission or aim has some greater good element to it. It gives you an increased sense of belonging. We've talked about social importance over and over again in this podcast, and being able to belong to something that you feel is doing something to help society or help the world in some way, increases your sense of belonging. And two things happen. One is employees would take less money to have purposeful work, but also you get greater job satisfaction. You know, Nurses and doctors have tough jobs, and especially during this pandemic, have really tough jobs. But you still get the sense of satisfaction of being able to help people in one way or another, and finding some cause that your customers are interested in, not necessarily just the employees, but customers also, which is a good segue into the customer component of this, is that when customers, when you find the right cause, customers will pay more for your product or service, because if all things are equal, but this person's, helping children, disabled children, or something like that, then, well, this one's really not doing anything. I'll go with this company. Now, I think it's important that it resonate, for maybe what you do as an organization. Sometimes that gets tough. If you're an HVAC organization, maybe it's, helping fix air conditioning and heating units in places that really can't afford to have that done, or maybe giving money to for power that would normally get shut off if people aren't paying their bill because they're in an underprivileged area. Whatever it is, it's something to look for and find, that it becomes a rallying cry for employees and customers. So that was it for this week's podcast episode, and gives you 5 things to think about with regards to your brain. Again, there were social importance and standing, having a clear future, personal control and freedom, being equitable or fair within an organization, and finding some greater good, some broader purpose for your organization. We'll talk to you next week.